and Abram. 2 was the contract between God and the people of Israel, with Moses as God's spokesperson and the people of Israel as other contracting parties. You know what happened when Moses realized that the people were not abiding by the contract? He threw the stone tablets down and they were broken. In essence, signifying what happens when people do not meet their contractual obligations. The last contract I may want to quote from the book of Genesis will be the contract that was executed by Abram when he wanted to bury his wife and he didn't have land. He had to contract and buy a cemetery to buy that land. In our midst, there are employers and employees. And the 2 categories of people have different obligations. And over and above the 2 contracting people in an employment relationship, there are other relationships that transcend the environment in which you, as doctors and medical practitioners, serve. You will need to get into engagements with governments. You'll need to get into engagements with the state agencies and other players. The manner in which you negotiate your contract will have a big impact on how you perform those contracts and deliver in your core mandate, either as an employee or as an employer practicing in the medical sector. I will highlight a few elements of what constitute fundamental terms and conditions of contracts. Of course, there are those terms and conditions that are so fundamental that if broken, then the contract will come to an end. There are other terms, though important, are not so fundamental that if broken, will bring the contract to an end. What then is your responsibility to ensure that you get into a contract of a binding nature which benefits you and sustains the venture for which you've contracted? Many will think you will need a lawyer to get into a good contract. Yes and no. Some will say, as a doctor or a medical practitioner, I'm well equipped to know that which is important in the field in which I want to contract. Yes and no. I remember a doctor once told me that the only way in which I'm able to diagnose your problem and give the correct prescription of medicine to alleviate your plight is if I understand fully what you're suffering from. So it is important that as a contracting party, you understand what you're getting into. You need to know the parameters of what ground you can cede and what your ground you must maintain. And I have, in my interactions in the recent past, always told my doctor friends that the problem that bedevil you in the medical fraternity is this. You reside in a cocoon. It is called the silo mentality. That I'll set up a hospital, I will employ doctors, I will have patients who will treat them, and will expand. I don't want to call it a business because medicine is a vocation. We will expand the vocation. But you see, in doing so, and that is a noble task, you need to realize that the practice of medicine is not isolated. It is taken within the confine of other vocations. So that as and when you sit with a lawyer in the boardroom to tell him the details of what you want to contract, you need to understand both your peculiar environment and the outside environment that you want to operate in. Timeframes. You need to ascertain from your own abilities whether the time within which you require to perform a particular task is within your ability to meet. Don't leave this assignment to the legal draftsman, because the legal draftsman or the legal draftswoman will only put pen and paper only on that which you've agreed. That is your deed. Consideration, or let's put it in more easier to understand terms, money. There can never be a contract unless there is consideration. The government of the Republic of Kenya has gotten into an understanding with the government of Cuba in order that the government of Cuba can second medical practitioners in Kenya to supplement. I don't know whether there is need to supplement, to complement, to help, so that the doctor-patient ratio is enhanced and an equilibrium reached. What is the consideration? What is the government of Kenya getting? How is the government of Kenya getting that? What is your role as a medical practitioner here in that engagement? What do you, forgive me if I have to look for your name, what do you have to do to ensure that the interests of your members are well catered for? Dr. Chibanze Mwachonda, unajua nyinyi kila siku mnapenda kulia. Yeah, the government is not taking care of our interest. The government can never take care of your interest. And it's for good reason. Because the first contract in any constitutional democracy is the social contract, the contract between the government and the people. And the contract is there to confine the exercise of power by the ruler. So back to that point, consideration. There must be adequate consideration. The circumstances in which these contracts are entered into. We have a principle in law which is borrowed from the New Testament, that you need to mind the welfare of your neighbor. Jesus posed the question, who then is my neighbor? I didn't come with the Bible, so don't worry, I'll not refer to it. Who is your neighbor? Can somebody give an answer? You know, unlike you doctors, who after you've given small death to the patient, who knows small death? There used to be a writer called Wahome Mutai. He used to refer to the small death, anesthesia as the small death. So after you've given small death to the patient, your work becomes easy. You're able to work without interference. But unlike you, we lawyers work with a lot of interference because the client is conscious of, of the environment and exactly what you're doing. So the question asked, who really is your neighbor, is not just a religious question, it's a legal question. And it was posed in a celebrated case by the name Donoghue versus Stevenson. There is a beer called ginger beer. Who has ever sipped ginger beer? it's good to be in the midst of doctors. They are sober 24/7. Huh? So nobody has ever sipped ginger beer. So ginger beer was a famous beer in the early 19th century. And then this gentleman, Donoghue, went to Mkahawa to have a drink in the evening after attending to patients. Then we didn't have the small death. So if they had to amputate your leg, they were amputating a leg as you lament. So I don't know whether he was doctor. So he went to Mkahawa in the evening to have his beer. Then when he was taking his beer, he noticed that there was a snail at the bottom of the bottle. He was so offended that he decided to institute legal action against the Mama Pima, then Stevenson, who had served him beer. Lord Atkin formulated the principle of good care. He defined who a neighbor is. So that as you get into the contract, realize that the contract is likely to have implications to parties outside those contracting. It's therefore important. Much earlier in the development of the law of contract, nobody other than the contracting parties will sue. But now you've seen if KEMSA gets into a procurement contract that affects people outside that contract, the people outside that contract are entitled to make demands, accountability. And the Constitution of Kenya has come in with more stringent measures to ensure that there is accountability, so that you as a hospital, you as a doctor, you as, where the good lady, the one who was showing us the medical equipment. Yeah, I will call her Hua. Do you know what Hua means in Chinese? Hua, where are you? Yeah, Hua means flower. So that Hua, you can get into trouble if you don't acquaint yourself with the law of the land when contracting. So it is very fundamental that you acquaint yourself with the law of the land. I don't know how much time we've taken. Musita, how much time have we taken? Slightly more than 10 minutes. I was given 20 minutes, so I'll ensure that I confine myself to 20 minutes. Because we guys from Sinku are very precise when it comes to dispatch. I'm told the other school that rivals us is Alliance Girls. Anybody from Alliance Girls? And they'll be more notorious if they went to Nairobi school, medical school. Now that we've reached at this point where we've kind of demarcated the parameters upon which you need to contract, we need to go to the next level, because contracts are never permanent. Contracts are time-bound. You will perform your contract to completion if it was a 5-year contract, or your contract may be brought to an abrupt end by factors beyond your control. These factors are what we call in law force majeure, intervening events. Some call them acts of God, but for those who don't believe in God, we can comfortably say acts of the devil. COVID-19 is one of the acts of the devil. It's brought to a halt many contracts. The government of the Republic of Kenya has attempted legislative measures to ensure that the plight arising out of the effects of COVID-19 are ameliorated. Unfortunately, the pandemic relief bill that is currently pending in Senate has taken longer than was expected to come to your aid. Many people, in particular those in the medical field, have been affected. I'm sure you as doctors, you as medical practitioners, you as third parties who facilitate the practice of medicine have experienced these problems. You have a contract where you have to supply. You can't supply because the airspace has been closed. You can't supply because you cannot access finance that was promised by your financier. What do? You need to break the contract. And when you break the contract before maturity, then there are consequences. You'll be required to pay damages. Look at an employment contract, for instance. If you have doctors, you have nurses, if you have dentists, these are people who will need to be taken care of when contracts have been broken for reasons other than those attributed to them. And because in our midst, we fall in the dichotomy of employers and employees, and I must emphasize the need for harmonization of the discussion insofar as this issue is concerned. Allow me to refer to a book that I always use as a guide. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Dr. Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know whether he's a medical doctor, but he's a doctor. He says, mind your own business. It doesn't mean that you look the other side. It means if you are in that environment where you're employed, you need to look for ways that can sustain you outside that employment. It doesn't mean that you're breaching the contract. But it may also mean that you're breaching the contract. For instance, if you work in Dr. Mosita's hospital and then you have your own clinic, you're taking patients there, then you're breaching the contract. But you may have a butchery where you're selling meat. Dr. There is this joke that I'm told is prevalent in med school. But don't worry, if you fail in surgery, you can succeed in butchery. you will own a butchery and you will be operating on a subject that really does not complain. So you can have the side hustle. Let me conclude by providing avenues of solution to contracts that have come to an end either by themselves or that have been broken. There is a famous reggae musician, no, not the one that you all know that nobody can stop reggae, no, not that one. He says that you must negotiate. And if you don't negotiate with the landlord, you will litigate. Who knows that song? No, you doctors are very dull. Can you have some live friends? Daktari Machonda, many jokes are told of lawyers. There are many comedies that are reproduced of lawyers. I don't know why we don't have any of doctors. Is there any doctor joke? Good. At least you've laughed. So if you don't negotiate, you litigate. If it has reached a point in time that you have to litigate, then you need to make a very good decision, a choice of how best to take care of your interest now that the contract has come to an end. You can either go to court, you can go for mediation, you can go for arbitration. All these are parameters within which a dispute arising out of a binding contract, which though negotiated, has failed, and you must litigate. It is not only you who suffer the malaise of quacks, those who excelled in butchery but want to practice surgery. We also have many of those in our field. So have an informed view of what legal mind you want to handle your case. Do some little research, check, find out the expertise of this lawyer in the matter you want to instruct him or her. Because if you make a mistake, then the contract which you wanted to be remedied through a litigation, mediation, or arbitration will not give you relief. I think I've spoken sufficiently to address the very few issues that could be addressed within 20 minutes insofar as this matter is concerned. Let me close by saying this, because Dr. Musita, did you know you're a politician? Reverend Kariuki, did you know you're a politician? Well, many of you do not know. But you see, when you volunteer for public service, you take up a leadership role. It is a political role. And often they will tell you, we don't want you doctors to engage in politics. What is politics? Politics is administration governed by law. The biggest contract that is relevant to you as medical practitioners is the contract you sign with government. I've, over the last few days, been speaking to some of your leaders, and I've told them the problem that afflicts medical practitioners is this. We have bad policies that are transformed into law without the vigilance of professionals. And let me calibrate the wider subject of professionals and make it small and speak without the vigilance of doctors. For you to take care of the interest of the medical practitioners in Kenya, you need one umbrella body anchored in law that demarcates the parameters of engagement between the medical practitioners and the government. Because the fields of medicine are vast, they may be peculiar need to have specific associations to cater for specific experts. But the legal framework that acknowledges the role of medical practitioners can only be sustained through an act of parliament. There are no two ways about it. Because for us lawyers, we have the Law Society of Kenya Act, which is separate from the Societies Act, which is separate from the Companies Act, upon which we anchor the legal framework of our own internal regulation mechanism, as well as engagement with other players. Friends, if you don't negotiate, you will litigate. You will issue strike notices, nobody will listen to them. You will go to court, they will stop your strikes. Thank you so much. I look forward to interacting with you more. Asanteni sana. Mask.
Okay, another proper round of applause for the president of the LSK. You know, when he talked about small death, I was wondering who is that who has been doing small death. But the one feeling I got when Wakili was talking was, this is my own feeling. I was waiting with bated breath. I was just waiting for you to say, let reggae start. And I was just thinking about the reggae song. I think this one is called Landlord and Tenant. Yes, by somebody called Max Romeo. But there's a very nice clip of Wakili Nelson Harvey dancing to a reggae song on Twitter. I don't know who has seen that song. You've seen it, isn't it? Yeah, if you look at Wakili's Twitter handle, you will see where all the reggae comes from. And when I also looked at the president of LSK, your attire, I think if you walk anywhere, people just give way. But indeed, it is very enlightening listening to you and just making us think as healthcare professionals about how we need to interact with the laws of the land. I think one of the things that sadly, and I don't know whether my colleague, Dr. Machonda will agree, the sad thing about healthcare professionals in any situation is they always think they know everything. I think that is our nature. One of the most difficult things to get going in any situation, especially in Kenya, is to get healthcare professionals in one room and have them agree on a subject matter. It becomes very, very, very tenuous. For instance, yesterday I was talking to Dr. Kibias when he said there are plans to change the Kenya Health Professionals Oversight Authority, which was now introduced by the Health Act, or is it the 2017 one? Yes, there are plans. The ministry is thinking of changing that. And I had to ask, on our end, what we are thinking is that the ministry will be strengthening KH Power, giving it resources, because as healthcare providers, we are now relying on that oversight authority to help us transact our business. But he says, no, we are actually thinking of, changing the whole thing. And I had to ask him why. And he said, he whispered to me, it has been very difficult to get nurses, clinical officers, radiographers, laboratory technologists, and medical doctors to work together harmoniously within one authority. So, for instance, I think you've been seeing, what we are calling here is vested interest. So what is happening with KH Power, for instance, is KMPDC, the Council for Doctors, would say, if we are going to inspect anywhere, it is us, KMPDC, who should take the lead. You understand what I'm saying? And then the laboratory technologists will say, but why? You have no idea about laboratory, the vast nature of the field. So part of the solution is, I think as healthcare professionals, we need to talk to each other, but more importantly, I think we need to learn to listen to each other. This is where the issue is. And I think when in your closing remarks, you mentioned that unless and until we have an association that brings, an act that brings all our interests together as healthcare professionals under one umbrella, the tactics of divide and rule will keep operating for our scenario, and you can see them every day in our operations. So thank you so much, Wakili Nelson Harvey, for your wonderful remarks. Let's give him another round of applause. So it is my distinct pleasure now to welcome a colleague who Wakili Harvey targeted in his remarks. Akuje ajitete, akuje aseme what is happening with the healthcare workers. And I want to challenge Daktari that for us, the Rural Private Hospital Association, we are operators in the health sector, but we are private investors. In other words, we have doctors working in our facilities, nurses, lab techs, radiographers, but they are not on government payroll. They are on payroll from resources obtained through private investment. And sometimes I usually get the slight feeling that when KMPDU speaks, it speaks for the public sector. I don't know whether that is what you also feel. But we hope that when Daktari says healthcare worker rights, those healthcare worker rights apply to health workers across board, isn't it? Whether you are in private sector or you are in public sector, because we are all serving the same, citizens of this country. For instance, when you have been seeing the unfortunate deaths of our colleagues in the line of duty from COVID, it gets a lot of media highlight when the death has happened to a public sector doctor, isn't it? But we all know here that there are doctors in private practice, nurses, and all that who have succumbed to COVID, isn't it? And we also know that when we talk about availability of PPE, for instance, it has been very, very difficult for us in the private sector to tap into that PPE resource at county level, at national level, isn't it? I know, for instance, when Jack Ma, you guys know Jack Ma gave us PPE, Sindio? And this was a donation. But I, at my facility in Joro, I can tell you for a fact, I have had patients who have come in there and, a day or two later after we had sorted them for an issue, turns out they had COVID. I have had members of my own clinical staff who have actually been diagnosed with COVID. Now, where do we get PPE, for instance, for private healthcare providers? Aren't we part of the same boat, isn't it? So I think when we talk of the rights, it is probably cross-cutting. And therefore, my colleagues, it's my pleasure to invite the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, Dr. Chibanzi Mwachonda.
Thank you very much. Do you have a sanitizer for this? I must ask for that. I just spray it. I don't know if you can spray. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. I sat here and I listened, and before I speak, I must say that I'm glad that I've been given this opportunity to come and interact with my colleagues and also those who have invested in the private health sector in Kenya. I think from where we sit as KMPDU, healthcare is a right. And one thing I know is that rights are not given, not in a country like Kenya. Rights are fought for, And I listened to my colleague, Nelson, and I think when he mentioned Cuba, I asked myself, is he Fidel Castro? The attire tells itself. Or are we in Che Guevara's territory? But I think all who know Harvey know that he's very passionate about the way our country runs. And he's not the only one. We are so many of us. I think it's just that we are talking from different angles and talking in the different sectors. And why do I say this? Because today I've been given a topic here that is healthcare workers and COVID-19. But from a broad perspective and from my understanding, COVID-19 has not just affected healthcare workers. It has affected all workers. And the underlying principle of COVID-19 is that it's an occupational safety and health issue. We do have a law, the OSH Act 2007, WIBA 2007, but that is a law that has been very silent in this country. And COVID has exposed that. But what efforts have we seen from everyone involved as a worker to try and make sure that this law is applied to its full effect? And once we all understand that, then I think this voice of the plight will not just come from healthcare workers, it will come from the media, it will come from the law society, it will come from every single actor in this country, because that is where we are. And so what is COVID-19 and what has it placed upon us? I think COVID-19 being a global situation, a public health emergency, places it right at the core of the health sector. But it is also an economic crisis. So it is two crises in one, economic and health. And that then puts us in a situation where even investors, and I had my colleague, Dr. Brian Lishenga, even you as investors in the private health sector have been hard hit by this. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a scale down of clinical activities and even patient flow into the hospitals. That resulted in revenue dips. And what did we see? The effect also on the workforce that you handle. So these are realities and challenges that have been brought to us by COVID-19. But who's borne the greatest burden of this pandemic? I always say that yes, it has affected all of us, but the people who've borne the greatest burden has been the healthcare workers. And this is globally. We began with COVID-19 as dealing mainly with COVID-19 patients, but given the level of transmission of the disease, not just in our country, the community transmission, I mean, any patient who walks into the facility is now a potential COVID patient from the experiences of healthcare workers and from the experiences we've seen. And that puts the requirement for personal protective equipment, as you put, at a much higher demand than we were in April. What is the work environment that is required? When a country is at war, all efforts are put to ensure that the soldiers who are on the front line are well taken care of. And let me just give the scenario of how our defense forces in this country, the defense forces, how they're well taken care of. They may not have a voice to voice their challenges because in the security sector. But if today the country was at war and in the borders, you had a soldier hit or hurt, they'd be airlifted. They have a Forces Memorial Hospital. And even if they died, the family is assured of compensation. But what about our healthcare workers? Today, the first doctor who died was from the private sector, Dr. Doreen. And I actually took my time and went and spent time with the CEO and the management of Nairobi South Hospital. And I got to understand the challenges that Dr. Lishenga is talking about. Those challenges are challenges I captured, and part of the reprieve that we were seeking for. And you know, I'll go to why up until now, it's still something that is still on paper, is that one, the VAT on equipment, on testing kits, on reagents, that should have been scrapped off. We're in a pandemic situation. You know, provision of PPEs. The PPEs should be bought at a price that would perhaps be at cost and not bring on board the taxes, but there are interests here and the business interest. And this is something I put in a memorandum to the 5th Extraordinary Summit chaired by the President and the Council of Governors and all government actors, where decisions are made. In July, we're in December, that is yet to be done. And now this is where the question comes. The contracts that were being talked about here. So as doctors, as professionals, we sign contracts to offer service, but as a society, with the government that is running the country today, also signed a contract with all of us as a society. And when that contract is not being adhered to, then there's a problem. And in the words of Marcus Aurelius, the impediment to action. The impediment to action pushes us to action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So today we are faced with a situation where healthcare workers across private and public sectors are bearing the brunt of COVID-19. But what is coming out is it's more like in the public sector. Perhaps because as a union, our key pillar is to try and improve the public health sector. But there is one premise in which unions operate. If we are to achieve the social change that we all yearn for, then the union cannot operate on its own. We need alliances. We need the society to understand the plight. And once you have alliances with Law Society of Kenya, you have alliances with the Rural Private Health Facilities Association, you have alliances with the medical associations, and you all come together and say that this is where we are, and this is something that must be addressed. And we are all demanding, because holding to account government is an elephant, you know? Government is an elephant that cannot be held to account by 1 or 2, 3, 4 organizations. It requires a collective effort. When we see doctors dying, when we see nurses dying, we all know the time it takes to get them trained, and we all know that we have a serious shortage in this country. So one way or another, it will affect you. You will go to the facility. The time required for you to see the nurse or the doctor will be prolonged. And you will say that this hospital is inefficient. They take so long. Let me go to this side. Now, in the private sector, I know you've really tried. But in the public sector, where 99% of Kenyans, I'd say comfortably, because I know in this country, most of us have our relatives in the villages who rely on the public health sector, feel this brunt every day. And so the question is, for how long will we let health, which is a social pillar, be the business of others and not our core business? And not our core business in the sense of investing, but even it's how it's run. The politics of the country determine everything. So if as health sector organizations, and when I talk of organizations, I'm talking of us who are in the labor side of health. You have Rupha, which is in the business and investment side of health. If we keep quiet on how health is run in the country, then we become the problem. So perhaps it's time, and I'll challenge you today, to start thinking of how we can all come together and amplify the voice and the efforts to secure our own health. I may shout myself so hoarse about the welfare and plight of the workers and the people I represent, which is over 8,000 doctors. But if those who've invested in it, in the same sector, are watching from the sidelines, then we might not get to where we all want to be. And one thing that has also come out quite strongly that is needed now in this country for the healthcare workers is their psychosocial and mental health well-being. 8 months of shortages, of seeing your colleague die, has had an effect. So yes, there are strikes right now. And they're going to be, I can assure you, they're going to be even in the next 2 weeks, because the government is unmoved. But what will it take for us to move government? It will take collective effort for the government to start to understand that it is important that our plight is all taken care of. So where we are, apart from the fact that the strikes have demands, you're also experiencing the outburst of the psychosocial strain, emotional strain, and well-being of the healthcare workers. So you might not understand this and say you took an oath. And I've said this, taking an oath, no one takes an oath to undertake a suicide mission. By suicide mission, I mean, if the requisite protection is not provided, then there's no point, because if you die today, you leave behind a gap. The doctor population ratio is 1 to almost 10,000. So 10,000 people not taken care of. That's the gap you leave. And it is critical that we all start seeing it from that perspective. The actions that are taken can be stopped if every single person, and you know, society is powerful. Most of you here have connections to where it matters. If you can take time to understand what is being said by the healthcare workers, and through your networks and connections, reach out to those who run the government and tell them, listen, these concerns are valid. These concerns need to be addressed. Let us not look at this and approach this from a political perspective. They will be addressed, because sometimes when the same thing is said from 100 voices, no matter your stand, at some point you'll have to say, no, it can't be that I'm the only one who has a contrary opinion and everyone else is telling me the same thing. So it is important, and that is my request and plea to you as I conclude, that let us now from here take interest in what the healthcare workers are saying and use our connections and networks to reach out to the powers that be. Because I do not want to imagine the crisis that we'll have this December if nothing is done and it continues the way it is. You will not just bear the brunt of it as the private sector, but myself, yourself, and your family members will bear the brunt of it. Thank you.
I think I should also say weka sanitizer hapa. Wapi? So, a better round of applause for Dr. Machonda. I don't know if you felt like I felt. It felt very emotionally touching. Did you feel it that way? It felt like, you know, we, all of us, this is our responsibility. It is in your own way as a healthcare, an investor in healthcare, you have a voice, and that voice can be heard at even your local level, at your county level, you know, within the people, with the people you interact with. I think, Dr. you put it very, very clearly. And I sort of have an understanding personally about the sort of momentous task that you have been engaging in. Sometimes I follow discussions on the KMPDU page. This is the doctor's page on Facebook. And, you know, all I hear is Machonda this, Machonda that, he cannot do this, he can't do that. But sometimes I think that our leaders, people like Machonda and Harvey, sometimes they don't get the credit they deserve, isn't it? So, because really the task of leadership is a hard task. And for most people who step up to leadership, especially in non-government positions, let me say that, are actually doing a sacrifice. You know, they are putting their lives, their time, their families on the line just to achieve a social good. And I think in that sense, our two colleagues here deserve a better round of applause. Maybe we even stand up and clap for them. Let's stand up. Let's give them a round of applause for the work that they are doing for the country. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing. We really appreciate it. Okay, let's have a seat. So we have agreed that because of the nature of the team that we have here, and there could be some interaction that our colleagues want to have with you. So we are allowing for some 10, 15 minutes of some questions. You know, maybe you have something you want to ask Wakili, or you have something you want to put to Dr. Machonda. We are going to allow the mic going around and have some of those questions taken, and maybe they can give us their opinions. I will ask our two guests to come to the dais, so that everybody can see you, and we can field some questions and have a discussion amongst ourselves. Right, so the mic is going around. Iende pamoja na sanitizer tafadhali. And if you are sitting next to a window that can be opened, please open it. We need to make sure that you are having as good ventilation as possible wherever you are. Tafadhali, open a window. If it is a door, something next to you that can be opened. Let's make sure we get good ventilation around the room. So, LSK President Wakili, part of the reason why we wanted you to talk about contracts is actually, as investors in private, in health in the country, next year, we are expected to get into a new contracting cycle with the National Hospital Insurance Fund. And we had our colleagues from NHIF here yesterday. And one of the things, just to get us started, one of the things that we requested, and we said NHIF, this is our rudimentary thinking as doctors, we're not legal experts. We thought that the state corporation that NHIF is, maybe is also bound by the Public Participation Act. And when it is contracting, we might, I mean, we have requested that before, you know, these contracts come to Makori's desk, or they come to Majune's desk, or to Purity from Kerugoya, maybe as an association, a duly registered association which represents them, we can have a look at this contract and we can give feedback, we can input into it. What we have experienced in other contracting cycles, like the one which ran from 2018 to next year, is the contracts were drafted somewhere by, what is the name of the legal firm? I think I should report this legal firm to the president of the LSK. Your contract inakuwa imewekwa stamp ya kina nani? Is it Mohammed and Muigai? Is it isn't it? I think so. So, I mean, there's the legal firm contracted by NHIF to come up with the contracts. So these contracts arrive on our desks, and the branch manager for your region simply tells you your contract by Monday, and this is maybe Friday. Bring it signed back on my desk. Now, we are looking at next year, and we have requested the National Hospital Insurance Fund that before we sign these contracts, can we please have a look and input? But we are approaching it from the public participation angle. So maybe you can give us some advice on that. That is what I would first put, and then back to the floor if there's something on the contracts that you want Nelson Harvey to advise on. I see a hand at the back there.
Good morning.
Morning.
Wakili and Daktari, asanteni kuja. And Wakili, I wish you all the best ukijaribu to attain the two-third gender role. So I'd like to start with the contract issue. NHIF gives us classified contracts, which they sit and make by themselves. We don't negotiate, and even with that, they go ahead and breach their own contracts. They don't honor them. Like the facility I come from, we were given a comprehensive contract, and all of a sudden they just changed without application for change. And I was trying to put a question across if at all it is possible for us to find a way about it, because the litigation and arbitration seems to be failing us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel is from Busia County, New Busia Hospital. Do we have any other question on contracts for Wakili? I can see a hand at the very back. Can we get a mic? Oh, okay, bring it here to George. Emmanuel, just behind you, the lady behind you also has a question. Nampatia sanitizer hapo tafadhali.
Yes, good morning, Mr. President, and my colleague, Dr. Machonda, and my fellow investors, good morning. My question is to the President, and I wanted to ask him, now that I'm in contract with NHIF, despite the fact that they're breaching the contracts, and the people breaching the contracts are very junior officers, and they are forcing me to do things that are not in the contract, or they are actually breaching. For example, we have agreed that I need to do a surgery for 80,000. Somebody says, the money that we are going to pay you is 30,000 shillings. You like it, you don't like it, take it or you don't take it. I'm forced now because of desperation to take that. Or you are actually forced to do things that are not in the contract sometimes. Now I want to ask, is it legal? Is it okay? Is it contractual to sue the NHIF while in contract, or complain or take them to court for whatever they breached and the contract continue running? Or once you take them to court, the contract has a problem? That's the question. Thank you.
We'll take one more question on the issue of contracts. Please don't forget, it's not only about the National Hospital Insurance Fund. You're also in contracts with private insurance companies, MAKL, isn't it? Others. Maybe you are having some issue, you are wondering whether you have a legal recourse. Yes, Bonanjagi.
Thank you. My question is to Akiri. I listened very carefully about the issue of contracting. We, the facilities, disadvantaged in the sense that we are brought a contract and we actually sign at the dot. Maybe I would have been happier if only we could change this scenario, whereby we have one voice, negotiating voice, so that contracts from all insurances, we the providers have a say. Because as it is now, you are told the capitation of AON is 700. Some people are given 1,000, others 1,600. The services are the same, and actually you don't understand. For NHF, who happens to be our major stakeholder, you are given a capitation of 100 shillings. We don't know how it was arrived at. Some facilities are given a rebate of 1,000, others are given 15, others 3,000, yet the services are the same. I wished there would be a way of having a common voice from the providers so that these agreements are fattened and they are agreed by all. And let us know how they arrive at these figures. Otherwise, as it is now, the business becomes very challenging. Asante.
Okay, so 3 questions for the president of LSK. We will do another round. Thank you, Vincent. 2/3 gender rule. Okay, Sawa. We have a lady at the right back.
Yes, thank you very much. I was about to say 2/3 gender rule applies here. Yes. I have a question for Nelson Harvey, the president of LSK, and one for Dr. Machonda. And my first question to Mr. Harvey is, for example, you have a facility that has several facilities, like a hospital with several facilities. Now, the facilities are on lease agreement in terms of location. So you've rented or you leased a resident that you're operating in. But when you are leasing, you did not realize that the person who owns the building did not have the correct approvals from the county government. And now you're already in a lease agreement and you're required maybe to renovate the premise, but you cannot renovate if they do not have the drawing and the permits for construction. How do you go about such a situation? My second question to Mr. Machonda is, I realize there's a tussle between public health practitioners and medical practitioners. And I'm a COVID-19 survivor. And I know I went through a hell of a deal through that period. My question is, I believe the situation would have been handled better had the medical practitioners left the public health practitioners take lead in managing the situation from the word go. However, you realize at the ministry, there's a lot of doctors at the helm of the ministry as opposed to public health practitioners. And the tussle is on superiority issues between the medical practitioners and the public health practitioners. So my suggestion and my question is, wouldn't it be a bit beneficial if the medical professionals take public health as a course if they want to really manage the risk and communicable diseases like COVID-19 in future? Thanks.
All right, thank you. Was that from Penda?
Yes, from Penda.
All right, thank you, our friend from Penda. They have a chain of health clinics, and I think that's where this question is coming from. Any other lady? Ladies? Vincent, you are not a lady. I know very, very well. I refuse. Any of the ladies with a question to maybe Dr. Mwachonda or the lawyer? Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Anne from Favor Medical Services. My question goes to Mr. Harvey. There is a contract that we have with NHIF, and sometimes you find those QAs, they come, they want to bridge.
QS in full. Yeah. Quality assurance.
As officers, yeah, yes. They want to come and ask us to take the files to their office, and we have to keep the confidentiality of our patient because the files are only supposed to be accessed by a medical person, not a third party. So in that case, when they need those files to go to their offices, how do we handle now the confidentiality between our patients and the officers? The second question is concerning the MKAL. You know, we've agreed with them. The contract that we have is that we treat their patients. They give us the 900 and they copay of 50 bob. So sometimes if you claim less than 900, they don't pay you. And in the actual sense, you saw their patient. So what do we do? And there's a contract. We have seen the patient and we've claimed. So why can't they pay what is in the contract? Thank you.
All right. I have a question for Dr. Mwachonda. So you can also take this. What is the position of the KMPDU on this issue of pre-authorizations for procedures? I have seen a lot of doctors complain. You are being asked to do, let's say, a hysterectomy for 50,000 or for an appendicectomy for 50,000. And if you are not agreeing to that, the thing we said yesterday, refer to GOK facility. And this has been going on. We learned from the NHIF yesterday that, and it actually is part of what our friends are talking about, breach of contract, because you know there's an agreed sum for what they will pay per procedure. But then they first don't want to pay that agreed sum. And then they are saying refer to government, and these are your members. Does KMPDU have a position on this matter? And how do you think between the union and our associations, we can be able to synergize and get this moving forward? So, Wakili, I think you have a bunch of questions to take. Where is the mic? Yeah, let us sanitize up.
I will start with the question by the chair, Daktari, which I think, if answered, may also address many of the other questions. The topic you gave me to discuss in the morning was quite appropriate. the nature of contracts, and how to negotiate effectively. National Hospital Insurance Fund, though operated in a manner that indicates it's a government enterprise, is for all practical purposes a people's fund. It's the fund for the people you medical practitioners serve. And for that reason, I do not see the legal propriety, let alone the moral propriety, of you being given a contract in the morning and asked to sign within 1 minute with a dotted line. Just say no. Some may want to say yes because they need that business. But remember what Daktari said. Of all vocations, this appears to be one of the major vocations where business interests want to determine what has to be done. In conclusion, I want you to look at, I don't know whether it's a meme or it's a cartoon, of where certain gentlemen are playing a game on a table, and beneath the table, actually the stand of the table are people bending down. Have you seen it? And the caption is, all we need to do to end their game is to stand up. If all of you say we're not signing these contracts with NHIF unless it has been subjected to public participation, unless it's taken into account all our interest, they will listen to you. That is the solution. Just stand up. The game will end. Emmanuel, you spoke about these classified contracts. They enter into the contract, they breach them. I think my answer to the first question also applies to this. Let the contract be one that you have effectively negotiated. That is the only solution. There was a question about junior officers breaching the contract, and it was asked whether you can sue when the contract is still running, and if you sue, the contract comes to an end. No, the contract is time bound. It has obligations on both parties. If there is a failure of performance of obligations of one party, you can still sue without terminating the contract. So you should sue. But the solution, as I've told you, is contained in that song by the landlord and tenant. If you don't negotiate, you'll have to litigate. You don't need to litigate if you negotiate effectively. Njagi, the disadvantages arising out of being asked to sign on the dotted line, the same answers before, just don't sign. Stand up, the game will end. Lady Penda, you get you get premises, you want to customize them in order that you offer your services, then you realize it doesn't have approvals, and you get in trouble with the law. Due diligence is very important before getting into a contract. Don't lease an apartment block or a residential house that does not have a change of user to enable you to run a medical facility. It's as simple as that. If that person tells you we'll do it as we go along, is getting you into a situation where you have to litigate. Don't litigate, negotiate. Get somebody else who can give you a facility that is approved by the government to enable you perform the services you want to perform. That is the solution. Lastly, Anne, you asked about the confidentiality when these officers from NHIF come and ask for these documents. I do not know the peculiar circumstances under which they ask for the confidential documents, but my answer will be this. We need a proper legal framework, and you as stakeholders need to assert your views on this matter, so that before these officers from NHIF come and demand these documents, then there has to be an elaborate legal framework to ensure that you do not infringe on the confidentiality that you owe to the clients you serve. They don't pay in time or at all what is contracted for. The same solution, and I repeat, this is the solution. Let the government or government agencies realize that health workers, directly or indirectly, play a fundamental role in Kenya as a constitutional democracy and in the achievement of health care as a pillar set out in the Constitution. Have your stake on the negotiation table. And when Dr. and I speak, don't castigate us, because you've given us the mandate to go and speak for you. If he goes and negotiates, gets into a contract, wait, comply. Let him ensure that what is due to you is given. That in my humble view, will be able to ameliorate the concerns you've raised. And the NHIF, I'm told, is the biggest problem. They have been in court time without timber. They know how to maneuver, but they cannot maneuver if all of you speak and act together.
I think the take-home from the president is, don't litigate, do what? Negotiate, isn't it? Don't litigate, do what? Negotiate. I think this has been one of our major challenges, and maybe the president of LSK will come to this again, how we can negotiate as an association rather than as individuals. Back to Njagi's point, isn't it? So that at some point, it is not me alone or you alone, it is our collective voice. I think one of the things that happens, and you rightly put it, the NHIF is very good at maneuvering the system. They say, we only recognize that facility. We don't recognize the association. And I would put it on the next round. Maybe you can advise us, and Machonda as well, how you get into recognition agreements with these government agencies. Because I think when you're doing a CBA, before you sign the CBA, they must recognize KMPDU, right? And there's a process to getting into that recognition agreement. Maybe I'll put that to you as well. So Dr. Machonda, please, you can take the questions.
Thank you. I think there was a question about tussles between public health practitioners and medical practitioners. COVID-19. This is a disease that is novel, or has been called, is new. But I don't think that there is a tussle. We all have to appreciate that we will only deal with it if we collaborate. There is a space for everyone. Now, if you look at the entire context of the disease, from its spread transmission, which falls more on the preventive side through the public health practitioners, and then to the clinical aspect of it, where it largely affects your lungs and all other systems in your body, then you will appreciate the fact that the public health practitioners have their role to play in the preventive aspect, and the clinical and rehabilitative aspect of it post-disease is a fault that the medical practitioners have to play. So the guidelines for COVID-19 have had to be developed on that angle. The preventive, the social distancing, the enforcement of the workplaces is more of public health than even for the medical practitioners. So everyone has their space to play in this. And personally, I don't see where there's any tussle, because once you have your role clearly defined, then you will stick to it. And it is only collaboration and teamwork that will help the public health practitioner also enforce from the knowledge on the clinical aspect of it. So in conclusion is that we need to all agree that we have a role to play and define clearly what our role is and move together. If we keep on saying, this is mine, I should do this is mine, I should do this, then what happens in such a situation is that those who insist on such are left behind because there's work to be done. That work cannot wait for someone who is saying AB and then is saying DE. The work will be done and to be done by someone. So let us focus and do our roles. The pre-authorization for procedures. You know, I'll challenge you today to go and watch something on YouTube about the National Health Services in the UK. It's called the NHS, A Difficult Beginning. And that was after the swine flu pandemic. Now, in the NHS, A Difficult Beginning, the UK was trying to craft a healthcare system that would benefit the public. And in benefiting the public, they had to craft it in such a way that both the practitioners and the public benefit. So the issue of pre-authorization for procedures, we have the KMPDC fee guidelines, the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council fee guidelines on what each procedure would cost. There's an angle that we have to look at in how do we enforce the fee guidelines. And there's also an angle of how do we bring down the cost for the public. And I'm saying this, and I know that as a doctor, yes, these procedures are complex, they're difficult, and they take a lot of time in training to be able to do them safely. Now, NHIF pre-authorization, I'll tell you where the weak link is. Our position as KMPD, this came up first in 2018, if I'm not wrong. Our position was very clear that the fee guidelines are there. Let NHIF work around the guidelines and see, let them even give a cap of this is how much we can as an insurer. Then let us agree on how the rest can be agreed upon. But in enforcement, and I'll go back to the point where we have to stop looking at me as the individual to all of us collectively. And I like how lawyers do it. You know, you'll go to Harvey and tell him I have this case, and he'll tell you this is my fee. You'll say it's too much, this is too expensive. He will leave, you will leave, you will walk to the next, and the fee is the same. And you'll walk to the next, and the fee is the same. But what is happening in our profession? It's the exact opposite. That if I told you this, the patient will say, okay, this is expensive. They'll walk out, go to the next one. What were you told the other side? I can do it for less. And insurance companies have taken advantage of this in the profession because they're creating panels. And all this boils down to the capital-labor relationship. If you start seeing yourself as part of labor in this issue of fee guidelines and the work you do, then the only way out is collective. It cannot be an individual approach. It has to be a collective approach. We should come all together and say, this is what we will charge. We harmonize. Once we have harmonized the charges that you're talking about for the procedures, then it becomes a fee that is across everyone. There are those who will tell you, and it's normal and human to have someone say, mine, I'll charge less because these people cannot afford. And those will say, I want to charge more because I took a lot of time in this. But if we can get to an agreement together and come to the union and say, fine, this is what we have agreed upon, we will help in enforcing it even through NHIF. So that is the solution. We have to come together, discuss this soberly, look at it from all angles and agree and harmonize. Once that is harmonized, then we take a position and we move with the position. Thank you.
I think that is a very clear response, Dr. Machonda. Vincent, let us hear from you.
Good morning to our panelists and my dear colleagues. My name is Vincent from Vision Gate Eye Care Consultants. We're based in Busia County and Siaya County. I have two questions to the President, a man I hold in a very high esteem. And these are questions that are related to us as service providers in the private sector. In June next year, we're having our contracts reviewed. And from the experience, some of us who've been served with NHI for a number of years, we do have a direct relationship with the branches of NHIF. And previously, it's been that those of us who are so vocal, it's like we develop a hatred with the local management of the branches of NHIF. Even what my colleague from Favor was talking about, the quality assurance coming to pick the documents and going that, all those are measures meant to intimidate those facilities in a manner that if you do not tear the line, then the contract is gone. For your information, currently as we are, a branch manager can terminate your contract without any further deliberations from the headquarters. So my direct question to the LSK chair is that what can we do? Because currently we already have contracts with NHIF. And as I also speak, almost 50% of our business is with NHIF. What can we do to ensure that? Because as far as we're concerned currently, even the facilities that we have that are contracted with NHIF, we're not enough to serve the public. So what can we do from the LSK position to ensure that the facilities that are already contracted to date are not, their contracts are not terminated when they are doing the renewal? That was question one. Question two, that is slightly also related, as I said earlier, 50% of our business in the private sector is from NHIF. The other 50% of the business that is left is from private insurance companies. But of late, we've come to a realization that most of our clients, and I want to be very specific, especially if we go to the teacher sector, the teacher scheme have been with one insurance company for more than 5 years consecutively. I don't know whether it's because they are too competitive or what is it. Apart from that, we've got other companies that have coalesced towards the insurance companies that are taking up the teacher schemes. And wherever any other insurance company takes up, let's say like a county government, we are told that that insurance company is going to work under the supervision of another company. Maybe from the point of the Competition Authority of Kenya, what can the chair advise us so that, because as we speak today, we already capped, because even if UAP gets a cover for Kirinyaga County, you're told, yes, you've got a contract with the UAP, you're going to serve these people, but again, under another pillar, so that instead of even negotiating with the UAP, you're negotiating with another party. And that other party that we're talking about is also connected to this other company that has been with a given package. And that is, by the way, the teacher scheme is quite big. It's quite big. And the raw materials of a private insurance company are the patients. So what can we do to ensure that we have equity among these packages that come? And when we're talking about floating of tenders, equity plays comes ahead of any other thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you so much, Vincent. I will allow Wakili to take that. And in the interest of time, we will just cap it at that. However, there's a question which is in the air, but nobody seems to be asking to the president of the LSK. I don't know whether you are aware about this thing called what they were calling double jeopardy in terms of, let me just get this. In terms of payment of what are they called, legal fees, statutory fees to bodies. So I'm talking specifically about the single business permit. I think in this country, the health sector, we are paying fees to various regulatory bodies, the medical, the KMPDC, radiology, laboratory. So at some point there have been rulings that because of this nature, we also do not pay this thing called single business permit. But the challenge has been, counties are enforcing this one differently. So some counties actually, are adhering to that ruling, to the law, and others are saying, no, that ruling was not done in this county, so we are not going to comply. And I think even as late as last week, there are people here who are being forced to pay this single business permit. Could maybe the president, as we conclude, comment on this? Mike, who has the mic? Now, ladies and gentlemen, as the mic comes forward, we want to move into the important session that we planned for this morning for our chief guests, which is the launch of our strategic plan. And I don't know whether our colleagues from SMART are here. SMART? Yes, we are also launching our cooperation with SMART via what we are calling the Rupha Smart Card. I hope you are here. Can move forward. So, Wakili.
Vincent, your question is, what can you do to ensure that despite your firm position on NHIF, the branch managers do not terminate these contracts or fail to renew them come June 2021 when they are due for renewal? You remember where we started. The problem is not the laws. The problem is the bad men who want to go around the law. Two solutions. It is quite evident the other contracting party has a very strong standpoint. They have a lawyer who deals with all of you, if what I heard was correct. You need not have one lawyer to deal with all your contracts, but you can have one position. And when you insist on your position, you're likely to be attacked. You think they attack me because I'm doing anything wrong? No. Because the bad men and women find their way around the law. And we will continue saying this thing because there is no other answer. If you are alone, you are isolated. If you are together, they cannot isolate you. And then you asked whether the competition authority can chip in to rein in the monopoly. Same answer. The problem is not with the law. The problem is with the people implementing the law. And let me add one solution. Doctors, nurses, dentists, medical practitioners, find your way into the policy making and implementing organs of state. Get into parliament, get into county assemblies, influence decision making positively. If you think I'm speaking to the birds, go and read the book by Fidel Castro, In My Own Words. Che Guevara, doctor, revamped the medical sector in Cuba Within 2 years, he was done with it. He was made Minister of Finance. He dealt with finance 1 year. It can be done. But if you want other people to influence what happens in the medical sector, yet they have no knowledge whatsoever, their forte, if they stand at the helm of policy decision, is propaganda, then you cannot succeed. Double jeopardy, this is an issue that we've litigated time without number. What I want to encourage you to do so that the problem is dealt with once and for all. I believe in the 47 counties, the medical fraternity is represented. Just like us lawyers, we have county attorneys in all the 47 counties. And if we want to cascade down our principle, we do it through them. I will give you an example. For instance, we, as the Law Society, just refused to appoint the chair of the Liaison and Planning Committee in Nairobi County. Why? Because the executive had taken it upon itself to interfere with devolved government and install a structure that was not recognized in law. And they can't go anywhere. They will fight, but that is the position. So be united in addressing concerns that afflict you individually or collectively. Thank you.
Asante sana Wakili. A round of applause for Wakili. Okay, so as we set up for the launch of the strategic plan, that is what we are doing now, which is the main function we invited our guests for. I just want to ask Dr. Machonda, who has a busy schedule, are we going on strike? Tunataka ukweli ya mambo, isn't it? Yes, is there going to be a strike? We want to know.
The decision to go on strike is there. I think it's very clear. Whether we'll go on strike or not is not dependent on the union. The strike will only be averted if the government stops focusing on all other matters and focus on the key issues in that strike notice, which is very clear. It's more on the plight, the lives of the doctors. And you've lost already too many. At 13, that is already too many for the country. So today is 11th, the 10 days. If the government agrees to resolve the matters as put forth, there'll be no strike. But if they continue with the ping-pong games we've seen between the two levels of government and government agencies, and come 21st and there's no solution, there's no resolution, then there'll be a strike. Thank you.
Wow. Is that one clear? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, nataka wale wanatuchezea some music, they can start along. We are setting up for launching of this strategic plan. Should take a short time. If you wish to stand up and take a bio break, go to the washroom. This is the time as we set up. If you wish to stretch a little bit, yes. Sorry. Come.
As that is done, Daktari, with your kind permission, if I may ask, I've had, as your members were speaking, and Daktari and the president was speaking, the sound is one that we need to have a collective, and Dr. Machonda, you have stated clearly that you can't achieve much if you're the only one speaking. All of us need to be involved. It's wonderful when we say all those things, but is there a structure towards that involvement that perhaps KMPDU Rupha, and all other players. And now that the president is here, I think it would be a good opportunity to squeeze some commitments from him on the part of the Law Society. Could it be something that, other than just speaking about it in today and another day, could there be perhaps some commitments that are probably made to start moving towards a collective voice in terms of advocacy for improvement of the healthcare sector in general, and involvement of those of us who may not be practitioners or players in the health sector?
Awesome. Yes, Dr. Machonda will take this one.
Yeah. First to start, LSK is already on board. They've been with us. If you remember 3 years ago, in 2016-17, when we had the biggest industrial action, LSK came on board quite strongly. And I know my colleague Harvey here is very much on board. Perhaps it's just now to agree on how to move forward in the current context in terms of the actionable points. But I don't think they need any convincing. They're already convinced because these issues affect all of us. Now, one thing, we have a strategic plan that we launched in March this year. And in that, one of the pillars is collaboration, partnerships for social action. So COVID already, of course, disrupted a lot of the activities. But what I'd say is that the association, Rupha, and many other associations can come and we collaborate on how we will move forward on this. And there's one, apart from the plight right now, there's something that is not being done in the country that will require the voice of many people, the issue of vaccination for COVID-19. I think it's quite clear now that our government has just responded to the public pressure around it. But otherwise, there's no strategy around the vaccine. And being in the global south and seeing how the vaccines are being rolled out and the monies that are required, majority of our people are going to miss out on this. It's something worth considering, given the way the disease has emerged and keeps evolving. So we are ready as KMPDU. You have Rupha, the association. The officials can come. We can come have a meeting and structure a way of how we will engage, and any other partners, because you have so many partners as we speak. So you might see me speaking as KMPDU only, but I know the people I'm working with who are very close and are also bringing out their voice. Some out there, some silently, because that is also part of lobbying. Some are doing it silently in their own way. So it's something we are open to, and we believe it's something that we can work, and it will be able to strengthen this cause for a better healthcare system for the country. Thank you.
Awesome. I think, Dr. You're very clear about that, isn't it? Yeah. And as an association, sisi tuko tayari. LSK, we are ready. We can do an old boys gathering. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now coming into the launch of our strategic plan. I don't know whether our team is ready. Dr. Kangure, you're ready? Okay. Are we set up so we can come down here? Where are our friends from SMART? Those of you who can move forward, please come forward if you can move forward so that you are captured in the shot. There are still some spaces up here in front. Thank you, CEO SMART, Harrison. I think, Wakili, you're going to stand on the side there. Dr. Machonda, here. Dr. Kangure is taking us through this, so the mic is yours. to move forward.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And we have a short ceremony. Our guests, the President LSK, Dr. Mwachoda. We are launching the strategic plan for 2020-2025 for Rural Private Hospitals Association. This is the roadmap that is going to guide this association for the next 5 years. And we started this process in 2019, and the process has been very participatory. The document contains the thoughts and aspirations of the members of the association, and therefore they are committed to implementing this very, very important document. So we want to welcome our guests to unveil the strategic plan for 2020-2025. Can we applaud them as they unveil this document for us today? Great. Now, we need to cut the ribbon. So as we wait for them to prepare to launch, I think this is a great occasion after listening to so many people who have spoken for the last 2 days. I know we have gained a lot of information, and the information that we have now has empowered the association to be able to implement this strategic plan. And I was listening to the questions that you are putting across to our guests. They are very, very important, and because they open our minds and eyes on how well we are going to get down and implement a strategic plan. A strategic plan remains a document if it is not implemented. So we are looking forward to actually implementing the document as it is. And now we have been properly empowered with the knowledge and the information to do that. They are sanitizing the cables. Good. I think now we are ready to launch the strategic plan for Rupha 2020 to 2025. So Mr. President, Mr. Mwachoda, go ahead and launch this document for us. This is the collaboration that we have been talking about, collaboration and partnership. Yeah. Good. Wow. A hearty clap for the launch. Very good. I think now we want to take a picture with our guests and the chair of Rupha to signify this launch. Very good. Good, good, Karibu. Done with the photos? Very good. The chairman now is establishing the collaboration between smart applications and Rupha to support management of our records and patients' processes in our hospitals. Congratulations, Harrison and Brian. Great. And then I can see the president, LSK, has witnessed this contract. Very good. The other agreement, Chairman? All right, thanks.
Yes, we'll do a small briefing. Yeah, oh, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Asante. Asante. Karibu, Mr. President. Karibu, Daktari. Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, are we good to go? Tuko salam? All right, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. This is an annual general convention of the Rural Private Hospitals Association of Kenya. I'm the chairman of the association. On my left is the Secretary General for the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, Dr. Chibanzi Machonda. All right, the President of the Law Society of Kenya, Wakili Nelson Havi. We have had very good engagements today. We have been discussing about the nature of the health sector in these difficult times of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also discussed about the health sector reforms that have been going on, the changes healthcare financing is around universal healthcare. As you might be aware, World Health Day, and the whole universal health conversation is at the center. So we want to just communicate. We want to just communicate some of the issues that we feel are very important for the country, the health system at this particular moment in time. Number one, as an association for rural private hospitals and as healthcare providers, we want to condole with the families of the healthcare workers who have succumbed to COVID-19 in the line of duty. Specifically, we feel very saddened by the recent death of Dr. Stephen Mogusu. and also the recent death of a clinical officer in Nandi County, known as Victor Kipngetich, who have all succumbed to COVID-19. So this is our appeal, and we have said it before, that in general, the country has not been ready for the COVID-19 pandemic. Especially in rural areas and in the poor urban segments, the level of preparedness has been very, very low. And as you can see by the rising numbers and the mortality among healthcare workers, this remains to be the case. While there is hope now with the development of a vaccine, we are also very much well aware that it is going to take a while. It's going to take a while before this vaccine is widely available for the Kenyan public. And in fact, conservative estimates will maybe put it anywhere between 12 months to 18 months. So it remains a critical issue. For a long time, we will still have to be very vigilant. And this is what we are appealing to the Ministry of Health, to the national government, to county governments. We have a very simple appeal. Put the safety of our healthcare workers, the rights of our healthcare workers to health at the forefront. Whether they are in public sector or whether they are in private sector, Kenya does not have enough healthcare workers to lose them on the pandemic. We need to protect them. We need to have them properly covered by medical insurance. We are asking that this enhanced medical cover for healthcare workers, whether they are public or private, through the National Hospital Insurance Fund, it should be prioritized. Needs to be a priority. We don't want a situation where a healthcare worker is infected by COVID, and now we have to do harambes, fundraisers to take care of them. Number two, on the issue of personal protective equipment, we have almost 6.2 billion worth of PPE that are lying as dead stock at KEMSA. 6.2, this is by KEMSA's own estimates. 6.2 billion PPE at KEMSA. Some of them are donations, some of them have been purchased. This PPE will be of no use to Kenyans if the vaccine comes, the pandemic wears out, the curve is flattened, and we have lost so many healthcare workers, and we still have the PPE in store. So our appeal is this: let this PPE that is in stock at KEMSA be distributed free of charge. Whether it is to public or to private, they give out the PPE. The PPE has been bought by taxpayers' money. Let them just distribute it. So this is our concern, safety for health workers. The last thing we want to raise as Rural Private Hospital Association is with regard to NHIF reforms. It is very clear to us that the NHIF is in need